Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Salesforce Platform Developer, Day 1. Today, we're going to start with process automation and logic, and we're going to be focusing on the basic of Apex. Okay? So it's going to be just basic Apex, but we are going to be going into some little coding in Salesforce. Again, we're starting with process automation and logic. However, according to Salesforce, this is what you're supposed to know. If you go to Platform Developer Certification Guide, which is the Salesforce Platform Developer 1, you're supposed to have a very good understanding of the Salesforce fundamentals, which we've done several times from admin to platform app builder. So I'm not going to be going through all this with you. However, I'm going to touch some few stuffs which I expect to know, but I wouldn't be going through them in details. Data modeling and management, you're expected to know this implication of certain things. We've gone through this several times in our admin and platform app developer. So I wouldn't go through into details about this because I expect you to know this by now. So we're going into process automation. This is where we're going to be spending the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. After that, we're going to go into testing and debugging. Then if we have some time, which I believe we should, if you guys get what I'm teaching, we can go into user interface, then maybe go back into Salesforce fundamental and data modeling. But ultimately, we're going to be spending time here and we're going to be spending time here. Okay. So having said that, let's go into what we have for today. So basically, process automation and logic, the first part of it, I would say the first few bullet points of it, Salesforce expects you to know how to declare variables, constants, methods, and use modifiers and Apex interface. Okay. Given a scenario, use and apply Apex control flow statements. What are they? The for loop, the if else, and the likes. Okay, that's control flow. Variables are just declaration of Boolean, currency, and the likes. Okay. And given a scenario, write SOSL, SOQL, and DML statements. So what are they? They're just basic query language in Salesforce. So Salesforce expects us to know this according to the curriculum. So let's go into the org and see how to get started. But even before we go into the org, let me explain the key things which we're going to be doing. We're going to be touching base on multi-tenant architecture. When we started the Salesforce training, I already explained what a multi-tenant architecture is, but I'll be paying much emphasis because developers are required to know that Salesforce is built under a multi-tenant architecture framework. Then we're going to talk about MVC. Again, I expect you to know this according to your JavaScript, but then again, I'm going to go through what the MVC is and how things work when it comes to Salesforce. Then I'll go into the variables and constants, the methods and modifiers, the interfaces, Apex control flow statement, then the query language. So let's kind of like go into the multi-tenant for a start. So what is multi-tenant architecture? What exactly does it mean? You know, so if you have if you have different people living or using a particular resource, let's say you live in a condo and in the condo, you guys share resources, you guys share bills like fire, water, light, electricity, whatever it is that you guys are sharing. Then if you as a user, okay, you live in one apartment of the condo, you will be living in here and you'll be given your own resources. However, the entire platform, the entire resource is being built based on the entire build, is built for the building. However, when this is built for the building, they will now allocate.
Recording in progress.
So when you're developing as a developer, you should have it at the back of your mind that you're developing based on limited resources. You are developing your application based on limited resources. That means even though we have unlimited, I wouldn't say unlimited resources from Salesforce, Salesforce has allocated a certain amount of resources for us to use. By resources, what exactly do I mean? From a technical point of view, resources has to do with CPU usage, when you buy a computer, you have memories, you have processing power of that computer. Salesforce will have a big, larger processing power, and they will give you a small portion of this, okay? So when you're running query, you cannot just query a record that will give 1 million return. If it gives 1 million return, which is okay, but it's going to take a lot of computer power to display 1 million records. So Salesforce recommends that you should run queries in batches, or you should do transaction in batches. By transaction, I mean saving a record, creating a record. Don't just create 1 million records. Don't just save 1 million records. You have to do them in batches so you don't use or overuse the resources allocated for you. When you reach a resources allocated for you, Salesforce will stop and your action will not be completed, okay? So remember, when you're querying, when you're running DML, when you are processing records, when you're calling external party API, there's a limit to everything. In Salesforce, it is called the governor limits. So these are the things that you should be paying attention to. I might not go into details of all this, but you should be paying attention to them. So in your spare time, look into what governor limits are. Governor limits are essentially the limitations for what you can do within your Salesforce org. It doesn't mean that Salesforce has limits. It's just saying that you cannot return more than 100 queries synchronously. That's limits. That's governor limits. Okay? You cannot retrieve more than 50,000 at a time. That's limits. So when you're running a query and you say, find all the records where account name is ABC and update. If account name is ABC in 50,000 places, then you run in 50,001 places, then it's going to give you a limit. It's going to tell you that limit exceeded, like you should try again or something like that. So what you need to do in this aspect is to put a clause that will limit the number of transactions you can make, okay? So remember, there is what they call the governor limits, and it has to do with the multi-tenant architecture of the Salesforce platform. Now, let's go into deeper what it means to have a multi-tenant architecture. You know, we've seen the Sales Cloud, we've seen the Service Cloud, we've seen the Marketing Cloud, which is fine. They are the front-end facing applications that you guys see, okay? These are very nice, these are very beautiful, but this is what you end up seeing. But behind the scene, what happens? Behind the scene, all these applications that we create is lying under a Lightning framework, hosted under Heroku Server. Some of them are hosted under Heroku Server, and some of them are hosted under the App Exchange Server. So everything is making it work. And this collectively is called platform. So you have the applications that you put objects and everything, which is fine. Then what makes them stay? What makes them persist? Then you talk about the platform, which is holding them. Okay, so when you're having troubles with Salesforce, you need to find out where the trouble is coming from. Is it from a platform point of view, or is it limitation from a platform point of view, or from the application point of view? Then we have, obviously, the Salesforce. The Salesforce is the data. Where is data stored? The data is stored in a database. The database is different from platform. Platform is the server, the resources, the CPU, and the stuff like that that makes it happen. Whereas the data is stored in a database. Okay, so understand CRM data, everything is based on the database. And the platform, the Lightning, what makes it look really nice and fancy is the platform. And obviously the collection of all these objects, the things you do on the page layout and everything is the application, okay? So now you guys have a very vague, or would I say, a good understanding of what a multi-tenant architecture is. Let's go further into how things are done in the real world when it comes to programming. The concept of programming is very crucial. If you can get this, you probably can program. But then again, you need to understand how it works. When you go to a website, let's say blackforce.ca, you're faced with this landing page, which is cool, right? But before you get to this landing page, the system would have processed a lot of things. What the system would have processed is the routes. You type in blackforce.ca. Is there any domain called blackforce.ca? This is managed by an external resource, what's it called? It's a group of people, right? They call it DNS managers. This is the DNS. They go online and find out, is there any website called blackforce.ca? So if there's any blackforce.ca, where is it pointing to? What server? Where is the location of the server? That's why when you go and register a domain, they will now say you should host that domain. If you do not host the domain, you will not have a website. So the first thing you need to do is register the domain, then host that domain. Once you host that domain, you will be allocated what they call server. Server is who is serving this domain. Where is all the files of this website stored? Where is it located? That's the server. Okay, now that we store something in the server, who owns that server? This is where it becomes interesting. You can build your own server from scratch. You can build it from scratch, or you can buy server from other people that provide server. For instance, Blackforce is hosted under AWS server, meaning that I am using AWS server to provide these static resources. But what happens when this website goes into the server looking for information about Blackforce? It will go into what they call the controller. The route goes to the controller. What is a controller? The controller is the building block of the actual application logic. That means you're trying to find out, okay, I want to find out what to display for users that want to go to Blackforce. What should I display for those users? The controller is constantly thinking, okay, I want to display a view page, and this view will be displayed. The view is represent the presentation of the data. The presentation of this data is the view. So anytime I say, or we say, I want to update Blackforce to Salesforce or to Whiteforce, then I know that I want to edit the view. And logically, I want you to think about it that way. I want to edit the view. The view is what the user can see. The controller is what determines, like, what process that user can see. For instance, you can develop a website without a controller. All you just need to do is create a view and you have a website. However, if you want to say all members should be able to see certain link, non-members should be able to see certain link, then you put logic. Where do you put logic? You put logic in the controller. The controller is the brain of whatever application you're developing. So when I ask you to multiply 3 by 4, and you say, okay, 3 by 4 is 12. The logic where you're writing that 3 by 4, 3 times 4, is in the controller. Where you're displaying 12 is the view. That means you can create a website without a model, without a controller. But if you want to put some logic into the website, then you need to have a controller. Now, model. What is the model? The model is your Salesforce data objects, fields, relationships. What does that mean? It means that this object, okay, is what Salesforce refer to as model. Model is how you structure this, how you make it look, how you enter data into the system. If you want to enter a field called opportunity owner, it is called a field, like something you have to collect. So you want to structure it such that when a user is entering opportunity owner, then they are entering what Salesforce referred to as string or text or whatever it is. But the model is the way you structure it. I want to have opportunity owner. I want to have amount field. I want to have the username field. It's all done in the model. How do you want to collect that data? This is where you define it. Okay? Now, there is more to MVC, which is the database. The database is the data where you store the data, but because it's a Salesforce, you don't get to see the database. You don't even get to know where the database is. But you know that all this data that you store in Salesforce, it is coming from somewhere. When you want to display this record, you query the database. And the query is as a result of the model, the structure of the model. Okay, we're going to see how this stuff works in action, but you need to understand it. If you don't understand this concept, you will struggle with understanding how to develop. Okay, so you know we have the controller where the logic is, we have the view where the user sees stuff, and we have the model where the data is being structured and saved or retrieved from the database, save into the database or retrieve from the database. To make it better from a Salesforce point of view, this is what MVC is. So you have what they call the standard object, the custom object. That's the model. That's the model. Anytime you're creating an object, anytime you are querying from an object, you are querying from the standard object, custom object. That collection is called the model. Then, anytime you want to display records, you have the option of displaying record using the Visual Force page or the standard pages. That's the view. And anytime you want to write logic, you write it inside controller. There is standard controller and there is custom controller. We're going to see everything, but you need to understand it from a conceptual point of view. Okay? Because if you don't understand it from that point of view, you will kind of like struggle to grasp the development, the MVC architecture. It's very important. Okay? So now we have that. Let's see from a Salesforce point of view. A Salesforce point of view, normally from an app builder perspective, we have what they call the page layouts, the record types. But in programmatic point of view, we have the Visual Force page. So if you cannot do something using the page layout, you programmatically do it through Visual Force page. We have the workflow rules, the validation rules, the approval process. If you cannot do it using the workflow rules, the validation rules, the approval process, then you use the Apex triggers, the Apex controllers, the Apex classes. So all this stuff you haven't learned, but all this stuff you should know because you've done it in the platform app builder. Okay, then we have what they call the objects, the fields, the relationship. If you want to communicate with the data model, you use the APIs. You use the query language to retrieve data and to communicate. Okay, so you've seen the declarative approach and you've seen the programmatic approach. You need to ask yourself, if you're given a task, how should I approach it? Can this stuff be done declaratively? Then just use all this. If you cannot do it declaratively, then you go into Visual Force page. You've learned all this stuff in your app builder, but you need to know where it comes in when it comes to Salesforce Platform Developer. Okay, so without wasting much of your time, let's go into the real stuff today. Today, we want to learn the basics of Apex. So what is Apex? How does it work? You know, like you've heard about Apex and everything. Where do you even get started? When you want to do Apex, how do you get started? Okay, today we're going to be doing more. Please, if you have your computer open, it's fine to open it. But then again, you have to pay attention to kind of like get it. Okay, so we have this. In Salesforce, I told you this is the front end. This is the front end. And you have the back end. How do you get to the back end? How do you get to the back end? You go to the gear icon, you click on setup, and you get to the back end. This is the administrative backend. As a developer, you will obviously be using this, which is fine, but there is more to the backend than just the administrative backend. This is declarative backend. But when it comes to programming, the backend, where you want to spend most of the time, is the developer console. You see, there is setup and there is developer console. The developer console is where you write your programs, where you test your programs, where you analyze your program, where you, whatever you want to do as a platform developer, you start from the developer console. Okay, you start from the developer console. This is, I'm going to tell you a bit about this, but you should see that you have a lot of, you have the menu here. And this stuff, you can just copy it. If you don't like to work like this, you can copy it and just paste it here. And it's going to open your developer console on the tab like this. So as you can see, you can either be working like this, or you can just work directly from the tab, okay? That's fine. Now, when you're working, when you're building, when you're designing code and everything, you understand that there is what they call the debug. This is where, as a developer, you will spend a lot of your time. The debug. The debug is where you test your code. It's a place where you can write code and see things without having to, compile code and publish, create a file and everything. It's like a playground whereby you can just say 2 times 3 and it will give you results, or 5 times this and it will give you results, okay? So you need to understand that if you want to start testing your code, if you've written anything and you want to start testing it, you have to go to the developer console and you go to the debug menu. Then you open execute anonymous window. Execute anonymous window is when you just run the code without any issue, okay? Now that you have this, there's also the file menu. The file menu is if you want to create a file. Let's say you want to write a program. You want to write a program, and they ask you, just like your JavaScript, you want to create a new file. Then you go to new and you create Apex class. We haven't gotten to Apex class yet, but you can create an Apex class, or you can create an Apex trigger, or you can create whatever Visual Force page. Yes, you can create it from here. You can create anything you want as long as you know why you're creating them. Just like you're using a normal browser that has file, edits, debug, and everything, you have the developer console that has all this stuff. Okay, so now, when you start programming, the first thing you want to find out is, what exactly are you trying to do? What exactly are you trying to do? Remember, when you have an object, what is the purpose of an object? The purpose of an object is to store structured data. The keyword is structured. The keyword is structured. You can store data into an object, but if it is not structured, how would you be able to retrieve that data? Structured data is valuable. So when you have an object, like an account, for instance, you have what they call the fields. The fields is what makes it structured. Is what makes it structured. So what exactly are you collecting? You're collecting data, but you're putting it under a structured layout. So now, let's say we want to create a field on the account object. We go to new and we create a field, but we have to select what? We have to select a data type. This is Platform App Builder. In Platform App Builder, you select a data type. Data type determines the type of data you can put into that field. Okay? The data type determines the type of data you can put into that field. What are the types of data we have? We've done all this before. We know we have formula, we have checkbox, we have lookup relationship, we have external lookup, we have the dates, we have the date time, we have email, we have a lot of data type. This is platform app builder. Now, with the knowledge of this, how can I replicate data type as a developer? Because as a developer, you are also using data. Remember, manipulating, controller is where you manipulate that data. But before you manipulate a data, you need to have that data. So in Salesforce, or generally in programming, there are what they call primitives data type and non-primitives data type. Again, these are keywords you should be writing down if you want to learn, okay? If you want to learn ahead of the class, if you want to know more than the things I'm teaching in class, these are the key things you need to put down. So what are primitive data types? What are they? Why do they call them primitives? So Apex uses the same primitive data type. Okay, let me explain the primitive data type. Primitive data type are data type that comes by default. It's generic. In all computer programming language, you have what they call the primitive data type. So primitive data, they are immutable data type. You cannot change them, but you cannot manipulate them. Okay, once you declare them, that's it. You have to redeclare them or you have to reassign them to use them. Okay, if you say X equals 3, that's it. X equals 3, unless you want to redefine what X is. Okay, unless you want to redefine what X is, but X is 3. Unlike non-primitive, whereby you can add more different types of X, you can manipulate that and stuff like that. So remember, we have the primitive data type and the non-primitive data type. So let's go into the primitive data type so you can understand why we have them and why they're called the primitive data type, okay? So first of all, let's go into account data type. Let's scroll down and go to number. For instance, if you have a number, how do you declare a number in Salesforce? Or let's even say checkbox, a Boolean, true or false. How do you declare them in Salesforce? Because the type of data you want to collect is very important. If you don't know the type of data you want to collect, you'll be using a wrong data type to collect the data you are interested in. Okay, so if you look at what Salesforce says Boolean. If you want to collect a checkbox, whether it's true or false, whether it is yes or no, you need to put what they call the Boolean in front of it. So if I copy this and I have declared a Boolean by just specifying Boolean in front of it. I have declared a Boolean, a checkbox, by just specifying the Boolean statement in front of it. If you put this, you cannot assign true to this because this one in programming does not make sense. It is nothing. Is winner is nothing. If you want to store is winner with the right data type, you need to specify Boolean right in front of it, which makes it a Boolean data type. So by default, if you say Boolean is paid, what you get is null. That means it's paid as no value. Okay, so how do you check the value of is paid? How do you check it? How do you check the value of is paid? In Salesforce, there's what they call, in JavaScript, you have console.log. In JavaScript, you have console.log. In Salesforce, you have system.debug. The console.log you learned in JavaScript, equivalent of that is system.debug. And the benefit of typing in Apex this thing, console, is you can always get an idea of how to write whatever you're typing. So you start getting idea like, okay, this is how to write it, or this is what you need to. So if you know that you want to put debug, just press enter. So system.debug will now give you the value of its paid. You want to see what the value of its paid is. Then I just put it into system.debug. The current value of is paid is, okay. So I just want to check what is paid is. I don't want to check it. How do you test this? How do you run it? How do you run it? How do you check the value of is paid? You can select everything and execute highlighted. Execute highlighted meaning that I want to check everything I have selected. I want to check if it's working, or I want to check what the value of is paid is. Okay, that's execute highlighted. I select everything and I click on execute highlighted. However, if I want to run everything inside this place without highlighting anything, that means I want to run all the code inside here. Then I just click on execute. Execute will run the code without selecting anything, okay? As you can see, when I run the code, there is what they call the logs. The logs is where you see the action or the execute of, is where you see the executed data, the response from the system, okay? As you can see, what happens when you run the code? You see, it goes down and execute anonymous window. Then you can see that you have all these queries. It's telling you that you have SOQL queries. You've only run 0 out of possible 100 SOQL queries. You run this thing, return 0 out of possible 50,000 queries that you can return. SOSL queries, 0 out of 20. DML statement, 0 out of 150. So anytime you run a transaction in Salesforce, anytime someone creates a record, this stuff runs. You don't see it, but it runs. Anytime you go and create a record in Salesforce, this stuff runs. You might not see it, but it works behind the scene. The only reason why it doesn't matter when you are doing it here is because Salesforce has optimized the process of creating a record based on what they design. However, when you are doing this as a developer, you are in charge, you're monitoring it, okay? So when you run this, you see a bunch of stuff which might not be totally relevant to you because you're literally looking for the value of is paid. It's very hard to find it immediately. So the best way to do is to debug only. So it's only going to give you what you have put in debug, system.debug. It's only going to give you this line. This is what it means to say debug only. It's going to give you this line, what you want to see. Because system.debug is like console.log. So it only gives you what you want to see. And what is the value of boolean is paid? Null. So if you do not specify the value of any declaration, if you declare a variable and you do not specify the value, the starting value is null. Okay? The starting value is null. So remember, the boolean is a replacement of your checkbox. The boolean is a replacement of your checkbox, and the default value is null if you don't specify it. But now, true. Now I have specified the value of boolean to be true. So if I execute highlighted, I go to and I select debug only, the value is true. Okay, this is how you declare a variable. You have to use the right variable, the right value. You have to use it. You cannot say Boolean, you cannot say 45. Why? Because Boolean can only be true or false. The Boolean can only be true or false. So you cannot declare it as 45. Let's see what would happen. There is an error. Illegal assignment from integer to a Boolean, meaning you are saying this value of is paid is Boolean, but you're putting the wrong data inside the variable. You're putting the wrong data. So anytime you want to declare a variable, ask yourself, what type of data do I want to put into this? The type of data will determine what you put or how you declare it. And this takes us to the next one, which is, let's go to integer. So what is an integer? An integer is just numbers. Integer is just 32-bit numbers without a decimal point. Anytime you want to declare a variable without a decimal point, you use integer. Okay, so how do you declare an integer? The same way we declare a variable, integer. Integer number equals 5. That's it. So if you want to put a number that has no decimal place, if the value you want to store into class size, okay, class size, if the value you want to store into class size is 5 or 10 or something, class 5 can never be 5.5. It can never be 5.1. It's always going to be an absolute number. That's what is called an integer. Integers are numbers without the decimal points, 32 bits. Okay, so now we have this class size 5. You'll have noticed something when I'm declaring a variable. I put this semicolon there. In Apex, semicolon means that you have terminated that line. That line has ended. That line has ended. The same in JavaScript. You see why I asked you to learn JavaScript? Because everything is just, programming is unique, it's universal. The only thing you need to know is the syntax. In JavaScript, you don't care. You just say variable x equals 3. You don't care whether it is an integer or a Boolean or, it's only when you're using it you get the error. But you just say variable x or you say constant y. You say constant y. But in Apex, you don't do that. You have to use the right data type. You have to use the right data type. So right now, the class size is 5. And you can test it by running execute highlighted. We need to change this, okay? But instead of changing it, you can just comment it out. How do you comment in Apex? You just put two slash in front of it. That's how to comment, okay? That means I don't want this line to be executed. I have commented it out by putting this 2 slash in front of it. Alternatively, you can comment by, I think, you can, there is a multiple, this is JavaScript comment, right? So this is multiple comments. Look at, I put slash star, then end slash star slash, right? That means I have commented 2 lines simultaneously. That means I can connect everything inside this place. I hope you understand what is happening here. I am just teaching you how to comment. So when you're working and your code is not working, the first thing you want to do is maybe you want to comment certain things just to make sure that you want to find out where the error is coming from. You want to find out where the error is coming from. So you might want to comment just one line. You use double slash and that's it. You use the double slash and that's it. This line will not be executed. However, if you want to comment everything from year to year, you can just put that asterisk, okay? And you end it. Then anything else you write here will still work. Can you see? You've commented everything from here by using that, okay? So now you've seen how to declare a boolean and integer. Let's test this integer. And if you want, anytime you want to test, you want it to open automatically, just click on open log. So the log will just open automatically. Okay, you don't have to go and click it here. You will open it and it's going to run immediately. Then you put on debug and it's going to give you the current value of class size is 5. This is how to declare an integer. I'm teaching you how to do the basic stuff. This is programming. Forget about all those code you will see in future. This is the basics of programming. Knowing what type of data type you want to put into the results of your logic. So what is logic? Logic is integer, okay? AB equals A times B. Okay, you can just say integer A equals 3, integer B equals 5. Okay, then integer AB remember, always terminate the line. Anytime you're coding, always terminate. If you don't terminate, it will be thinking you still have more to write. Okay? Always terminate. Then you have written a simple logic to multiply A and B together, which is what? 15. But how did we get that? We declare integer A, we declare integer B, then we multiply A and B together, which is AB. This is programming. The only difference is you're not going to be working with integer or boolean. You're going to be working with a bigger data structure. You're going to be working with complex data type. But this is the fundamentals. This is the fundamentals. You know how to declare a data type. Knowing how to declare a data type is the beginning of programming. Knowing how to declare a data type is the beginning of your programming, whatever it is, because programming, remember, programming is model, view, controller. View is what the user will see. Controller is the logic. Model is the structure. The structure is integer, is boolean. That's the structure. So remember, integer is when you want to store a value that has no decimal points. When you want to store a value that has no decimal points, that is integer. So what if you have a decimal point? What if you have a decimal point? Look at, we have this here. You know, when you select number, you go to next, and it specify 18 and 0, meaning no decimal points. No decimal points. But once you put decimal points, this reduces because you can only have maximum of 18. So once you put 16, then it reduces to the sum of 16 plus 2, which is 18. So how do you store a decimal point? If the result of AB is likely to be a decimal point, you will store it as double. Double is also a primitive. As you can see, these are just by default, the computer language data type, integer, boolean, double, whatever it is, they are primitive data type. So where is double? This is double, a 64-bit number that includes a decimal point. It includes a decimal point, meaning if the result of your operation or your manipulation would have a decimal point, then you can store it as a double. Okay, you store it as a double. As you can see, I was able to run the code, but it gives me 0.0. Unlike previously, I had 15, but now I have a decimal point. The difference between running this as double and declaring this as double is that if you now put, I want to put a, okay. I'll tell you what the problem is when shortly. So we have that. It gives A as 3.0, then AB as 15.0. So you don't have to necessarily have points in order to call it double. The system automatically assumes that it is a point. So when I was running that, it gave me an error, right? Initially, I did something like this. It gave me an error. The reason why it gave me an error was because this is a string. This is a string. What is a string? A string is just a text wrapped around quotes, right? Then I am trying to concatenate a string and a double. And you know, in formula, this doesn't make sense, right? You cannot add a string and a double together, right? It doesn't make sense. So if you want to print it, you have to add it. You have to add it. So you're going to have like a string plus that double, but the collected value will now be a string, right? But you don't just add it without that plus sign. Now, let's go back again. I want to show you something. You have a double, you have an integer, and let's say you want to store it into an integer. What do you think this would be? You have a double, which has a point. You have an integer that does not have a point. Now you're saying you want to find integer AB, which is a multiplication of double and integer. You're going to get an error, but let's see. You see, illegal assignment. If you understand data type, you should be able to resolve any error code that has to do with an illegal assignment. Illegal assignment is you analyzing your code and you're finding out where in this code am I having issue? It says on line 10, column 13, you have an illegal assignment from double to integer. Where is your line 13? Where is your line 10? So it says you're trying to assign a double to an integer. This is programming. Knowing the data type, knowing what to store, how to store it is programming. Okay, so now let's go into another primitive data type, which is the date. The date is very important. Why is the date very important? Because the date has what they call methods. The date has what they call methods. What are methods? Methods are inbuilt functionalities. Inbuilt meaning that it comes with the system. So if I click on this date methods, you will see that I have all these methods that are associated to a date. If I want to add more days to a date, if I want to add more months to a date, if I want to return the day in a date, these are methods you can use with a date. But before we get to methods, let's just declare a date. I want to store a value that has to do with a date. Then system.debug today's date is today's date, right? Okay, so I'm just going to put 2022. I'm going to put 04. I'm going to put 18. Okay, so now we've seen today's date and we want to display today's date. Today's date is this. So you've seen today's date is this, which is fine. But this date that you now have, it has what they call a method. It has methods. Methods are, you can now get the months of today's dates. You can get the day of today's dates. If you don't know them, if you do not know them beforehand, what does that mean? It means that if the computer, look at last modified date, if the computer has stored this in the value, in the database, you now want to get this value, last modified date, find the last modified date of this record and add an extra day to it. That is a program that you have to write. So it's not going to be declared this way. This is how to declare a date in like a natural way, like if you want to add code a date. But in reality, this is not going to be the case. The case would be, I want to retrieve the date of this record and find the months in that date, or find the year in that date. Then the case will now be using the methods that come with dates. What are methods? Methods are inbuilt features of a data type. Okay? Inbuilt features. It has inbuilt features, meaning that I can find out, I can find out the day, returns the day of month component of a date. So if you look at the use case, I want to find out the day of a particular date. I have today's date dot, okay, day. Okay, based on this. You can see how it's being used. Okay, you find out the day. So if you find out the day, what would that day be? The day is 18. The day is 18. And how do you know that the day is 18? Because you declare that date. But remember, this is just add coding a date, okay? You want to add code a date, but this is not what will happen in real life. In real life, you will store a date in a database, you will retrieve that date database, and you want to find out the day of that date. So you've seen how to find out the day. Now that you know that this is the way to find a day, what if you want to store the value of that day? How do you store the value? The value is just an integer. The value is just an integer. So how do you store the value of the date? You declare an integer, date, today's day, okay? Then you print out today's day, which is 18. Always remember to close. If you don't put semicolon, it will give you error. Always remember to put semicolon. Anytime you're done with a statement, put a semicolon. It's very important. You see, most of the error we've seen, it's something that we could address immediately. Sometimes you will face an error and you cannot address it immediately. Always go to, look at, if I take off the semicolon, execute, it's going to tell you where the problem is. Programming is so interesting that you can never get lost unless you're lazy. Unless you're lazy, you can never get lost. You tell you, go to line 5, unexpected token, today's date. This is today's day. It's telling you that you have specified today's day, but I don't know what today's day is. Today's day is. This is where it's referencing, okay? I don't know what today's day is. But if you terminate this, it's going to realize, oh, so you've declared today's day as an integer, and you are now displaying that integer here. So it should be 18. The same thing we did before. The only difference is now we store the value. Okay, we store the value before using the value. Today's date is 18, which is the date. In reality, it's going to be different. I'm just giving you a very simple example, okay? This is method. Method called day is inbuilt to date. That means you cannot just use .day on any other declaration that is not dates, okay? So always remember, there would be methods associated to a particular data type. Contains methods for date primitive data type. Understand methods. Methods are just the things that is present. If I want to get the months, the same way I did the dates, I will do the months. So instead of day, just put months and you get the months, okay? This seems basic, but you see where everything comes together. Once you start writing programming, you will come back to this data type video and study how you declare data types, because that's the fundamental of programming. Being able to declare a data type you want. What type of data do you want to store? Always ask your question. I'll ask that question. What type of data do I want to store? Then you go into primitive data type or non-primitive data type, which we're going to cover tomorrow. But today we are focusing on primitive data type. Data type is the key to programming language. So now, the same way we have date, we have what they call the date time. The date time is similar to date, and it has methods that you can use. Okay? It has methods. So if you have this right now, and you call it date time, okay? You go back to your developer console. This is date time, okay? Then you declare this, which obviously ran. Is this okay? But you have more things to work on. What are the things you can work on? You can declare more values. And you see, you declare more like 7, 8, 16. You need to know the value of 7, 8, 16. You need to know it in terms of what are you adding. For instance, you want to add additional days. You see what additional days are. Add days, 2. That means you're adding 2 to this, to 17. Sorry, this is a day, right? You want to add additional hours. You're adding additional hours, which is 7. This is the hour. This is the minute. I think this is the seconds, okay? So hour, minute, second. You're adding 3 hours to the date time. What is the difference between the date and the date time? The date is the date, and the date time has date and time. The same way you have in data type. You have the date and you have the date time. This is the same thing you know in App Builder. The only difference is now you're declaring it in a raw form. I don't want date, I want date time. Date time will have the timestamp associated to it, okay? So that is the date time. Now, we talk about double, which is fine. Double has decimal points. But what about decimal? What is the difference between decimal and double? Decimal is used for currency. Decimal is used for currency. You want precision, you use decimal. Okay? You want precision, you use decimal. You want dots, the double, you just have a dot in place. In place, you use dots, okay? But if you want to collect currency, you want to collect money, you use decimal. So the same way you use double is the same way you use decimal, okay? Decimal, dollar rates, dollar, decimal, product cost equals 5.6. Okay, that's it. You have a decimal. You've attributed it to currency. You might probably be thinking, so what's the difference between decimal and stuff? You need to read what it says. If decimal is created as part of a query, the scale is based on the scale of the field returned from the query. But the bottom line is, even in the certification exam, they will ask you the difference between decimal and double. Decimal is used for working with currency values, but double is used for working with general numbers, okay? So remember that. Decimal is typically used for currency, okay? So you've seen boolean, you've seen dates, you've seen date time, you've seen decimal, you've seen double. Let's go to ID. What's so special about ID? What's so special about ID? ID is special because ID is the primary key. When you open a record, you see this Salesforce ID, which is a 15 character or an 18 character. A 15 character or an 18 character. That's the ID we're talking about. So if they ask you to find all opportunities where ID equals this, you have to say where ID equals the ID, okay? So equals the ID. Let me just copy it for the learning's sake. So that would be the ID. So you cannot just put any value. You cannot just put any value and declare that as the ID. It will not tell you it's an ID because ID, according to Salesforce, is a 15 or 18 character used to store the valid 18 character for the Salesforce record. So what does that mean? It means that if I say ID equals if I say ID okay, variable does not exist ID. ID, Salesforce ID. Invalid ID. It's an invalid ID because it does not match the Salesforce ID. And if we copy this, let's try this as a kit. Can you see? The difference is this has to be the right ID. If it's not the right ID, it's an invalid Salesforce ID. It's an invalid Salesforce ID. So please, when you want to collect ID, what do? You put ID in front of it. When you want to collect dates, you put date in front of it. When you collect integer, you put integer in front of it. When you want to collect date time, you put date time in front of it. When you want to collect string, what is a string? A string is this text, the text input field. It's just used to store characters. I want to store characters. I want to be able to store my first name. String first name equals Babatope, you have to do what? Put it in quotes. You have to put it in quotes. I'm giving you the fundamentals. This is where your error will come from. Once you start programming, this is where your error will come from. You do not put it in quotes, you do not put semicolon, you do not declare it as a string. It is a bad data type. You're collecting ID into a string. You're collecting this into a this. Use the right data type. This is a string. So if you want to concatenate two strings together, last name equals Olajide, then system, or you can just say string, full name equals first name plus last name. Okay? And you just say system dot debug full name. Full name, okay? Can you see the full name? Okay. One thing you realize is that unlike, is it other program like Python or something? I don't know. Because I know a lot of programming language. The case sensitivity on the variable, it's ignored. Okay. You see, I call it full name here and I call it full name here. It doesn't matter, right? Or like some programming language whereby you have to specify that it's the same way you've written it. Capital, small, needs to match. Okay? But with this, you can get the full name without having to match the right capitalization. Okay? So you have first name, last name, full name, which is a concatenation of the first name, last name. Why do you declare variables? Why do you declare variables? You declare variables because you want to use it. You want to use it. And it becomes easier to change. Let's say you have full name this. Then you now say you have password equals string, password equals last name plus 3 or something like that, okay? Now, you've used last name twice. If you add, put last name continuously, year and year, you would have to change things in 2 places. You would need to change things in 2 places, which is not efficient when it comes to programming. It is not efficient. Why? Because if they ask you to change the last name, you now go and change it in almost 3 places. You change it here, you change it here, you change it here. But the idea of putting last name here would make it so efficient that anytime they ask you to change last name, you know that all you just need to do is change it here, and it will reflect on this place and this place. That is why you use variables. You declare the variables and you use it throughout the scope of the operation. Maybe tomorrow or Wednesday we'll talk about scope, okay? But right now, let's focus on declaring variables. Once you know how to declare a variable, you are good. So now you've seen ID, you've seen integer. Long is just like integer, it's just a long. Okay, long is like, integer, you have this, and long, you have 2 raised to the power 63. So it's just a long digit, okay? So now you've seen, let's go to objects. Before we go to object, let me see if we've done string. Let's do time, then we'll go to object, okay? Let's do time, then we'll go to object. Time. The same way we have dates, we have time. And the same way we have methods in dates, we have time. I can find the hour in a time. Look at. I have time. My time is new instance 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're breaking it down, you will see that if you add hours of 3, you will see that you're adding. You will see the thing you're adding here. So if you're going to any method, you will see what this is. Add minutes. That means you're adding minutes. So if you say add minutes plus 5, 35. From 30, it goes to 35. Okay. Then if you're adding seconds, which is the third column, this is hour, this is minutes, this is seconds. Okay. If you're adding seconds, this will now turn to plus 5 or minus 5, whatever it is. Okay. Then if you're adding, there is what they call milliseconds and stuff like that. So if you're adding milliseconds, then you know that it is going to the fourth one. Okay. So you just need to know how to use it. You need to know how to use a method. It's very straightforward, but you need to know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, you will be using the wrong method. But remember, this is how basic it can get. You declare something and you use what you've declared. You manipulate what you've declared. Okay? You manipulate it. So the same way you've done the string, you can use the time and everything. Now, let's go to objects. Object is used to represent any data type in Apex. So you have objects, which is this. So if you have, let's say you create an Apex class, for instance. Let's say you create an Apex class and you want to declare an instance of that Apex class. Then you have it as an object. So what do I mean by that? If I have an Apex class, which is sample objects. Okay? Sample objects, which is like, let's just say objects, right? Then I want to create an instance of this sample objects. Let me save this, which technically should be saved. Then I can just say sample objects that is declaration of an instance. Obviously, we did not do any debug, but you have literally created an object, which is this, and you have declared it using the new sample objects. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you from a programming point of view? You have what they call the account objects, the contact objects, opportunity objects, whatever object you have to declare the instance of that object. To declare the instance of that object, what do you need to do? Account equals new account. You have declared the instance of an account. This is an object. You know that account is in the system, right? You know that account in the system. Then you have declared an instance of an account object. This one is an object that we created. Okay? This object, we don't go and create it in the backend like this. It's just the Apex class. Okay? It's the Apex class. However, the account object, we've already created it. Salesforce created that by default in the system. So for you to declare an instance of an account object, all you just need to put is new account. I'm going to be telling you what that means shortly. But you need to understand what they call the instance. What is an instance? When we are creating dates, what did we do? We created an instance of a date. New instance of a date. That means this would now have the date methods. This is the methods present in a day, in a date. but you've created a new instance of a date. You need to understand it. If you don't understand it, you need to kind of like get it logically. What exactly are you doing here? You're creating a new instance of an account. What's a new instance of an account? It has opportunity owner, opportunity name, amount, expected revenue, close date, and the likes, because it is an instance of an account. It has all these fields present. So let's just kind of like system.debug. Okay. There is nothing in that account that we've just declared. There is nothing there. It's an object. In JavaScript, what do you understand by object? Object is just like a bigger box that contains properties. Properties. What are the properties? Properties in that object. These are the properties. You have fields, names that has the account name and the likes. That's objects. And you can even have inner objects. Inner objects are objects that is contained within an object. So you have a bigger object, you have an inner object. You have car, you have the engines. Inside the engines, you have other things. So object just kind of like bring everything together to make sense out of, or to make it rigid. That's the purpose of an object. Object is just to store record. You can store information in an object, and this is the beginning of program. Understanding this is very powerful. If you have an object and you want to create an instance of that object, you declare it as new object. You want to create an account, a contact equals new contact. So what do you have in the contact objects? If you go to objects, you go to contact. So what do we have in the contact objects? We have account name, we have description, we have email. So if I want to create an email, I just go to .email equals so if I say system.debug contact, okay. The contact object, which we've created as an email. Do you know why we can put email? We can put email because in the contact object, there's a field called email. I have just declared the contact object and I have stored email in the contact objects. I've replaced or stored this email in the email field of my new contact instance. I'll still teach you how to manipulate database in subsequent classes, but for now, understand this concept. It's very important. Understand this concept, the concept of an object. It's very important. Like it's just very important because this is the beginning of programming, being able to work with an object. I've given you an example of a class object, which is just a simple apex. And I've given you an example of a standard object, which is inbuilt in Salesforce. So if you go with what's this thing is telling us, it says, I declare an object called 10. Then I cast it into an integer. What they've just done is declare an object called 10 and they've cast it into an integer. That means they replace the value of I to be 10. That's all they've done. And they've also done object, which is an Apex class. And they've classed Apex class as an object. But you don't need to kind of like stress yourself over this. The bottom line is you need to know how to create a new instance of an object. It's very important. Okay, so I want to just take a pause to find out how you guys are doing and if whatever I'm saying right now is making sense to you, because we're going to need it tomorrow. Okay, so please, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Let's address those questions. But please, don't leave this class until you understand what I'm teaching you, because what I'm teaching you is basic and fundamental. So let's learn it, let's get it, and we go into something more complex. So I'll call you according to how your hands are raised, but please raise your hands and let's address it, okay? 1 minute, please. Amo, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, good evening, Babatope. Thank you for this. My question is, this one we have displayed right now.
I did not get that. Just give me 1 minute. Let me put on my stuff. I did not get that. Just 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Okay, can you speak again, Amo?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was saying what we have displayed right now. Please, I would like you to break it down a little bit more. So are we saying, what I understand, or what I'm trying to understand is, this account, we are declaring it, that's the object name, right? No, we're declaring that we're trying to create an object in account, right? And then the ACC is the name of the account. I'm applying what we did in JavaScript here. I'm just trying to understand what exactly we are doing, right? So ACC we have is the name of the object, and then we are saying whatever we put in new account with the commas is the value you assign into the ACC. Is that what we are saying? Or new, this new, because I can see this new looks like a primitive, what do we call it? It's highlighted like it's a primitive, what did you call it now? Forgotten.
It is a used word. Is a used word. It's like it's something that you use to instantiate, but it's not. It is inbuilt to the system. It's not something you write. It's inbuilt. Okay. So okay. I think I get what you're trying to ask. So basically, I use ACC because it's an account. You can use anything here. You can use anything, and you're just storing your new instance. Okay? Just like the same way you have an integer. Integer number or class size. Class size equals 5. So class size is just a name you made up. Mm-hmm. Is a name you made up, which is what you're trying to store the value of class size into. Mm-hmm. So I want to store the value of class size into an integer called class size. Mm-hmm. Same way with accounts. I want to create a new account, an instance of an account. I want to create a new account. It's going to have the structure of my Salesforce account. But the name I'm storing that account is whatever I put here. Do you get what I mean? So whatever is now an instance of an account. An instance is a record you want to retrieve or you want to save into a database. That's just it. That's what an instance is. An instance lives within this place until you save it or you use it somewhere else. Instance is just floating. I want to store accounts into the system. How do I start manipulating an account that I want to store? An account would have what? It's going to add, okay, we're using contact. A contact will have what? A contact will have emails, birth date, assistant, account name, and the likes. This is the attributes, the properties of that contact, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to create a new contact, I need to create what I call an instance. An instance is what I want to create. Until it persists into the database, it is still called an instance. You have to do something with that instance. Instance would have a copy, like, it's like you want to give birth. Your child would have the same structure as you, the head, the shoulder, the hand, the legs, and everything. You understand? It's just like an instance of a child, okay? An instance of a baby, of a human being. That's what we just created by creating new accounts. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if I get you correctly now, account, that's what we're trying to, that's the object, we're trying to create an instance, right? It's not existing, but we're trying to imitate what we have already as an instance. So this new that we have, must we always put new? Because to me, it's like it's a new object, or must that new always be there to show that?
Yes, because you're creating that instance. If you look at when we were doing, because it's an object, that's why it seems a bit vague to you. What about the dates? Look at the dates. When we were doing dates, how did we create dates? We created a new instance of a date. Because data and whatever we did in date is the same thing that we've done. It's just that it's an object. Object is a bit, sounds a bit scary, but it's still the same thing. New instance of a date. What makes up a date? Year, month, and day. What makes up an account? First name. What makes up a contact? First name, last name, email, and whatever. Is a new instance of a date. Is a new instance of a contact. Do you get what I mean?
Yes. Thank you very much.
No worries. So don't think about it from that big object. No, let's work from the fundamental, a date. For you to create a date, you need a year, you need a month, you need a day. The same way we're doing accounts. Subsequently, when we start building Apex classes, you will see how to create new instance of a particular class. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Ola, can you unmute yourself and speak, please?
Yeah, thank you, Babatope. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, from what I see, okay, you created the object, the new object, account. Now, you have created email, which is a property, and you have given the property a value. If we're trying to create a property that is not, if we're trying to create something like not email that is not part of the property of this object, what I'm trying to say is like a custom object, and we're trying to create a new field, which is a property, and give it a value. If it's not part, if the property is like what you've done now, email, if you have put something that is not part of the property, does it throw an error, and what exactly, what I'm saying, like what we're doing?
Yeah, it's going to throw an error. It's going to throw an error because it's not recognized. It's going to tell you, I cannot find what email R is, because email R is not a property in the contact object. Can you see?
Okay, yeah, good. But can we now create email R as a property and give it a value?
Yes, but you have to first of all create it here.
Oh,
go
you have
to
to create
Salesforce object and create. You cannot create from you cannot create from programming here. You have to create from the object interface, then come to programming and manipulate it. Because you cannot create model from programming. You have to create model from objects. Remember what we do in data modeling. Data modeling, you create the object, you create the fields. Once you're happy with the data modeling, then you go to programming and start coding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Saga, unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, hi, Babatope. So I had the same question. I think one part of my question was answered. So this when we do it like the way we do a new account, like constructor in JavaScript, then it would be like it would have all the properties of account, right? But I want to know now I have another question, which is why do we need to do this?
Why do we need to do what?
Why do we need to do one instance of, let's say, an object?
Because everything is an instance. Everything you want to do is an instance. Look at this stuff is blank. This stuff right now is blank. The computer does not know anything. So if you say you want to create an account or you want to manipulate an account and you say acc.email, it's going to ask you, what is acc.email? Like, it doesn't know. So you need to first of all declare what ACC is. For instance, you say account equals ACC, right? But still, it still doesn't know. You need to create an instance of that account.
In order for us to...
Yes, in order for you. This is just for the understanding. It's just like you're saying date. You're saying date equals my date equals null or something like that. You just say that, right? Then you need to start working with the dates. Okay. If you don't know, like this will just give you a structure that this is everything we have. So when you're programming, you need to be able to declare the instance and start using it. Because if you don't declare the instance, it will just be asking you, so what exactly do you want to do? What exactly do you want to do? Like right now, you have this email. You can say, okay, this is email, which is fine. But if you want to find out the value of acc.email without first declaring, just have a null. You have a null, and this would result into a null. System.debug. Okay.
Yeah. So that means that so the computer basically doesn't know what objects we have in Salesforce. So I need to first define it here.
Yeah.
Then I can manipulate it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. So you need to declare the instance before you can use it. Okay. Because at this stage, the account is null. So there's nothing like acc.email because it is null, right? And you're trying to figure out something that doesn't exist. Okay. Ola, please unmute yourself and speak.
Good evening, Babatope. I want to ask a question about the Boolean. When we were doing the console log, it came out as null, and my understanding of it is that it has just two values, true or false. Does that technically
true or false plus null?
So does that technically mean it can hold three values instead of two?
The initial value without declaration is null. Do you get? It's null. Then you can say it is true or it is false. Do you get what I mean? So initial value is null. So you can actually have three values if that's what you want to call it, because initial value is null. Do you get?
Okay. Like let's say we are using the administrative data in the setup, the back end in the normal Salesforce. When we declare it, I think we always say, okay, maybe the default value is true, or maybe false, or it may be false. Maybe because we are not putting in null, does that mean we can still put in null during that period, like using the administrative setup instead of the developer set?
I'm trying to understand the question. So basically, are you trying to say like Boolean is page and put it null like this?
Yeah, something like this.
Yeah, it can take null. I think it can take null. So it's a case of it's paid, okay? System.debug. Yes, no, it's just gonna give you null. Null is actually I an inbuilt statement as well, okay? You need to be very careful about inbuilt statement. Anytime you see this column, know that they are inbuilt statements, okay? Just be careful about it. Okay? Yeah. Uchman, please.
Hi, Babatope. My question is, can you declare like the ACC, like the variable, without adding value, then go ahead with your manipulation, just like we do in the JavaScript?
So you have account ACC equals new account?
No. Account ACC, then semicolon.
Okay, and you want ACC dot, let's say, name?
Yeah, or email, yeah, something like that.
Okay, let's use email. Let's use contact, because I know there is email in contact. Okay, so you want to say email equals, it's going to be null, because first of all, you haven't created an instance. You haven't created an instance of an account. You've only declared that this CNT is storing contact records, but you haven't declared an instance. That's the difference between an object and a normal other data types. With the object, you have to declare the instance. Right now, it's going to tell you you're trying to dereference a null object. Attempt to dereference a null object because the object is null. Okay? Then you can now say CNT equals new contact. Once you declare this instance, then you now say the object is just empty. It's not null, but it's empty. So the difference between the initial the difference between this one and this one is now empty. Okay, so let me show you. System.debug CNT and system.debug. This is null. Okay. This is empty. Empty and null is look at another key thing for you guys to learn. Empty versus null. It's an interview question, okay? It's an interview question. So understand it. This is null, okay? This is empty. Can you see? Empty has now created an instance of a contact, whereas the first time it was just null. There was no instance. Can you see? It's important you declare the instance before you start passing value into that instance of that object. That's the key takeaway for tonight. It's important you declare the instance of that object before you start passing values into the object. Otherwise, you will not be able to pass in the values, even though this one is saying, I want to create a contact, a CNT, and that CNT data type is contact, period. Nothing more, nothing else. When you do that, the CNT is null. Now, if you now say, okay, I want to store contact records, then new instance of CNT, which is contact, now gives it a structure of a contact. Then you can store all the fields present in the contact, such as email, first name, last name, and the likes. Okay?
Okay, so lastly, does system.debug work exactly like console.log?
Yeah, I've been using it. It's just like console.log. The only thing is that you can put some string in front of it so you can see, the value. You can put some text prefixes to see, right? So it works exactly like console.log.
Yeah, but I noticed that, like in this instance, you have the system.debug above the CNT.email, and it's not throwing up error. You have it above your block of code.
Yeah, because this CNT, this one, because it is here, right? I declare it. That's why I can use it. Do you get? I declare it already, so I can use it. If I don't declare it, then I cannot use it.
Oh.
I cannot use it. It's going to say CNT does not exist because I haven't declared it.
Okay.
But if I declare it, then I can use it. This is programming. First of all, you declare, specify the data type, then instantiate that data type, then use it wherever you want to use it.
Okay, sounds good.
No worries. So, yeah, so is there any other question? Because this is the beginning of programming. If you don't understand what we've done tonight, it's very important you go back and understand it, because tomorrow we're going to be working with non-primitive data type. You've seen how straightforward primitive data type is. It's just declaration of variables, setting them and using them. Okay? Remember, integer, date time, string, time, boolean, blob. I don't think we did blob. Blob is another data type whereby it used to store attachments. So if a message or if an object has an attachment, you can use a blob to store that attachment. Okay, so blob is just another data type that I use to store attachments. That's it. So we have blob, boolean, date time, decimal, double, ID. We have ID, decimal, double, and we have long. Okay, so you guys, you just need to play around with this and do manipulation. Do manipulations. So can you convert an integer to a string? Can you convert this to this? Yes, you can. Look at this. With casting, you can convert integer to string and string to integer, provided that it is a number. Okay? So it's called casting. Remember? Please, what I am typing here is something you should learn outside of the class because it is interview questions. Empty and null. They are interview questions. This is what they will ask you if you go for developer interview. They will not ask you to code. They will not ask you to do some magic stuff because there's no time for that. These are the little things they will ask you to test you if you know how to code. So now I was talking about casting. Casting number to string, Salesforce. So let's say you have a number which you collect and you now want to turn it to a string. You use my value of. My value of would cast the number, the string to a number. Okay? So let's say we have this. So right now, I have a string. Okay? This string, it looks like number. 1, 2, 3, 4. The string looks like number, but it is not a number. It is a string. Okay? Why is it a string? Because it is wrapped around the quotes. It looks like a number, but in the declaration, it is a string. So how do I convert this string to an integer? Just get the value of looks like number, and you get the value as the integer. So system.debug So system.debug will now give you that integer. Okay? You have literally converted a string to a number. We started with a string, we use value of, and we convert it to an integer. Similarly, I can convert an integer. I want a string instead. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have integer 1, 2, 3, 4. But I want this to be a string instead. Then I go to string equals my string equals string of. I think it's string of. String value of, okay. String value of, okay. You want to use string value of, I want a string instead. Okay, then system.debug my string. Okay, this is a string, but it is an integer. It started with an integer, but it is now a string, okay? Because my string is string. This is how to convert from integer to string and string to an integer. You know how, if you know how to use data type, you are 10% ready to start programming. Because what is programming? Programming is collecting data, manipulating data, and displaying results of that data. That's programming. You collect, you process, and you display inputs, processing, and outputs. That's programming. But you need to be able to know how to use this syntax, how to store these values, and how to manipulate them. Okay? I think that's all from me for tonight. Do you guys have any questions before we end the class?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so we've seen integers, we've seen Boolean, we've seen decimal and double. But in this context, is there a difference between number and integer?
So what is number? Number is just integer, right? Like there's no data type called number. It's just an integer. So if you don't have a decimal, you use integer. And I gave an example in Salesforce. If you want to create a new field, you don't see integer, right? You see number. Then if you put a decimal place, it becomes a decimal, right? But by default, this number is an integer in Salesforce. But once you declare a decimal place, it becomes a double, like, you know, all this kind of stuff. You get? Okay?
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Is there any other question? Okay, I'll be monitoring the attendance for this platform developer class, just to let you know. So it's very important you actually attend the class, okay? Because if you miss one class, you are going to struggle going forward because you don't know, maybe it's a class that you missed that is crucial to your learning, okay? It's very important. And just 1 minute. I think that's all from me, but I want to